All right, recording is going. Hi, everybody. My name is JD, and I'm here with some fellow GitLabers and fellow parents. Today, we're going to just be discussing not only working remotely and our experiences working remotely, but more specifically, our experiences working remotely now that our families and our children are home with us. Everyone on today's call, it works for GitLab. Which is a fully remote, fully distributed team of more than 1,200 employees spread across 65 different countries. We'll kind of go around and do a little introduction. My name is JD. I am a sourcer on the recruiting team here at GitLab, and I have a two and a half year old son named Wilder, who's been at home with us for about 2.5 years now. So we can go, Christina, how about you go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Christina Hupy. I am a senior education program manager over on the community relations team. And I've been at GitLab since coming up on 6 months here, and I have worked remotely for the last 2 years. And I have 2 children who are now home full time with me, obviously due to the current situation. And they are 9 and 12. And then my husband's also home now full time as well.
Awesome. David, how about you go?
Sure, I'll go. I'm Dave Smith. I'm an engineering manager here on the reliability and infrastructure teams. I've been with GitLab nearly 2 years. And yes, I've got a 9 and near 13-year-old, so similar to Christina.
Awesome. We'll go Jennifer, then Heather.
Okay, I'm Jennifer. I'm a PR manager on our Corp Comms team dealing with all things content and award submissions. I've been working remotely for about 2 years as well, and I have an almost 4-year-old and almost 7-year-old. Both their birthdays are in May, so it's busy.
Yeah. And I'm Heather Simpson. I work on our security team in external comms, and I've been with GitLab for just over a year, working remotely for the past 13 years. And I have a 7 and 9-year-old daughters.
13 years remote, that's awesome. That is a lot of experience. I felt really confident about my 3 years of remote experience. Yeah. So I guess from here, what we'll do is we'll talk about some stressors now, some things that we're having to adapt to. Again, I mentioned like before we got started, hate to use the term dealing with, but for lack of better terms, again, let's try not to think of it as like necessarily negative, but just that's kind of the situation we're in. We are having to roll with the punches day by day, figure things out as we go. And a lot of those are going to start with stressors and how do we adapt to those. Myself specifically, as I mentioned, my wife and I were very fortunate. My wife works for a fully remote company as well that is fairly asynchronous, not nearly as much as GitLab is. But we are able to kind of balance our schedules to handle Wild, our son, being home with us full time at all times. And we're expecting number 2 here in a couple months. So that'll probably, get to be a little different, as everyone here with multiple children is probably like, welcome. But some things early on that I struggled with specifically is feeling that I couldn't step away from my work at any time. And it's taken me a really long time, coming from a previous organization that wasn't asynchronous and really didn't allow for a whole lot of remote work. It was butt in seat 50, 60 hours a week in an office. It was really difficult for me to say, oh, I can work 90 minutes, 2-hour chunk, get this project done, and then step away and come back later. Our biggest stressor now is that he is 2.5 years old. He wants to be involved with everything, help with everything, and my biggest issue currently is removing myself from work, especially again, since we all work at GitLab, we're all at home anyway, but finding space for myself to be fully removed from the household and also come back to it when it's time. And so that is what we're kind of in the process of figuring out. And feel free to chime in at any time, anyone that has anything.
I'll chime in. So I almost feel like I'm sort of the opposite. I feel like I'm being pulled away from my work more than I would like. Especially because my husband is also now home, and we're both very passionate about our jobs. We both love what we do. I'm very fortunate in that, you know, GitLab is all remote, and we've been set up from day one to support all remote, and it's super flexible, friends, family first, all of that. That being said, doesn't necessarily mean that I always want to take advantage of that, or nor should I. I don't, you know, I've got my team to worry about, and I've got things that have deadlines. I think the struggle it's probably not so much our kids, honestly. It's just figuring out schedules between my husband and I. He works for a community college in their Office of Disability Services. So this is really stressful for him too. It's a really crucial moment for him in his position, because he's trying to figure out how to provide services for people who have different disabilities. Some people might be blind, might not be able to use a computer, or any kind of reason that they might not be able to do like online classes and things like that. So, you know, I feel like he's been constantly running around with his head cut off like a chicken. So that's been our thing. We go through waves, like up and down. Occasionally it feels like we've got it, and we're all a team and we're working through it. And then there are times where it's like just everything just blows up and looks like my background. So yeah, we kind of take it week by week at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, from the job itself didn't change too much. It's all the outside world pressure on the job that was forming cracks. The number of interrupts for me feels like it doubled or tripled because of the at-home interrupts. But, you know, while the kids were at school, I was used to the whole, they were going to be gone for 5 or 6 hours. I could have some of that time to focus on the work things, and that's just gone. So that's been the struggle of, I agree with what Jennifer said, like there's been a lot of adaptation of like constantly changing of like, okay, this week we got it, next week is just total chaos because some kids got needs with homework that are, I need to go sit down with them for an hour or something, and or my wife does, and that means I gotta go help with something else that wasn't getting done. So that's been the just constant adjustment lately.
Yeah, I would agree. For me too, I had the 6.5 hours from when the littlest one got on the bus to the oldest one came home, and that was just really great core focus time that now has gone away. So I think that's the biggest challenge, obviously, is the distraction of them being in the house. And we can, some things have really worked, and we'll talk about that in the next section. But I think for me, it's being consistent. It's setting the ground rules and staying consistent puts an extra thing that I have to keep on my plate. But the more consistent you are, the better off I think everyone is. So for me, it's setting the rules and sticking to them is challenging. You have to stay on your toes, you know, to make everything kind of stay in the lane, in the right lane.
Yep, same. And schedule is key. I mean, and when you talk about staying within the rules too, Christina, I think for me, now that they're home, they're so close. So sometimes leaving my office means entering into, you know, even when it's my time, my work time, because my husband and I are doing shifts, which is another something I'd recommend. But leaving my office means I'm putting myself into the mix. They see me, they're still, you know, they're old enough, but young enough to still want to spend time with me. So just having that separation still while they're here is pretty challenging.
So it sounds like across the board, everyone's dealing with kind of not necessarily just scheduling conflicts, but a lot of interruptions, and trying to find balance between, you know, managing those interruptions or trying to not only navigate them, but maybe rid the interruptions like via schedule. And Heather and Christina both mentioned kind of scheduling parenting sessions, I guess, is how we'd say it, or like a block schedule. The past I don't know if I mentioned this, my wife has been remote for like 8 years now. But once I switched to being remote and Wild joined the crew, what we found was that block schedule really, really did help. One thing that we do, and this will lead us into the next section, maybe how each of us can go through and talk about how we've managed these interruptions or how we haven't even, and shared like we're still struggling with it. I know, Jen, you mentioned that it's like a weekly thing, kind of ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And that's the same, I think, across the board for all of us, and if not weekly, daily. I know my wife and I, something that's really helped, and it's really taken a lot of effort, is every night, even though we don't want to, we open up our computers, we sync our calendars. We're like, hey, what meetings do you have tomorrow that are a must? How much time do you need before and after to work? So I know no one wants to go from like 0 to hop on and lead a meeting. So usually, like, my wife and I both have meetings, we give each other a half hour to an hour before that meeting to either get other work done and prepare for that meeting, or just to, you know, clear their head and get ready, you know, for that day. We've tend to find that working in 90-minute to 2-hour chunks and then rotating back and forth with our son really does help. And that's kind of been our win. Again, it's a daily struggle. We have fires that pop up. I'm sure everyone here, especially Jen, your background right now reminds me like this. We all have fires that pop up. And I think communication and over communicating with your partner, significant other, or even your children, depending on age, is going to be clutch for this. And so, yeah, feel free to chime in and just let us know about your wins or what you're doing to adapt to these.
I will add on to the communication and say, you know, grace and understanding with each other, because it can be very stressful, and acknowledging that we're all just trying to do something that I'll say currently is very difficult. So understanding that some of the issues may just come from us being stressed out. But here we do try to do, we had started trying to do 1-hour shifts. And in the parenthood thread, our parenthood Slack channel, I think somebody was talking about 2-hour chunks that they had. And I thought, well, you know what? Because I really feel like I'm coming in and out and really being disrupted and not able to get anything done. And moving to 2-hour shifts where I sit down for 2 hours and work. And I got noise canceling headphones, which I would say are really key, because then I'm not hearing and being distracted and feeling like I need to tend to something that my husband is more than capable of handling when he's, you know, on his shift. So I think the 2-hour time slots are really helpful for the work time, and then, you know, really trying to cancel things out whenever you need to focus.
Yeah, I would second the noise canceling headphones. Heather,
Yeah.
I saw your post on that, and I just said, okay, my husband had some and I need to get my own, but they've been, because I'm right next to the kitchen, and where I am, I can hear everything. And so it was, a lot of it was just me distracting myself, listening to them fighting or making a mess or something. So I think the headphones just really, really help. I'm not really doing a schedule of block time with, my kids are pretty self-sufficient, 9 and 12. They for the most part can, be through, they need maybe the little one needs a little bit of help in the morning getting on her LMS and seeing what she has to do. But we just set clear expectations that they cannot come in here and interrupt me. And if they do come in here and interrupt me, then there's a consequence for that. And we've chosen to take away, they get a measured amount of technology time a day, and it comes off. So 15 minutes for every time they burst in here. And that's where I have to follow through on that, but it's working really well because they know they can't come in and interrupt, and that at least allows me to focus. And I go out frequently to get water or coffee. And so if they have a question, if they need something, they just have to wait till I come out, and then they just can write a list if they need to or whatever. The other thing that's been just really helpful is, I make a morning list of things that they need to do. So they need to be outside for an hour. They need to, read for an hour. They need to do their workouts, whatever, because they're both athletes. And so they have, one of them has online practice or one of them doesn't. And so they have this, and it doesn't matter to me what order they do them in. They just have to get the list done. And the technology the iPads and the phone does not is not available to them, and I use an app that controls access to their phone. So we're technology, but their phone is paused until the list is done. And my older one is a procrastinator, and sometimes that doesn't get done till 5, 6 o'clock at night, and that's just the way it is. So, but they know, the expectation is there, and they follow their list, and it's not perfect, but it's definitely helping. But they're kind of schedule oriented in that regard. So they like checking things off and saying, okay, I did this, I did that, I did this.
I like what you noted there. I think the other thing that I'd note, because a lot of people, it sounds like all 5 of us have been remote for at least some period of time, but the other thing that you're noting, Christina, and that's actually a poll because I see it with different people, is what's the space that you have for work? Do you manage to have an office? Because if you can have an office with the kids, then that creates that space of I'm in work versus I'm not. And when I step out, because yeah, I'm the same one, I have my own office space. So when I step out, I can be part of the family, but when I'm in the office, then I can close the door, or I can write something on the window with a whiteboard marker that says like, I got meetings from 10 to 11 o'clock or something like that. So they can see when I'm in versus out. And then there's other times with GitLab being open, like I'll leave the door open even if I'm in a meeting, because my son can come in and ask me a question about homework. But knowing when I'm willing to accept those context switches and when I'm not, that's been thing. One of the things that's been key was just, I was already reasonably good about putting things on the calendar for like working out times and other things like that. I had to start putting in times other than workout, like exercise times for me, like family time, like lunch is just blocked for going to help with lunch, eat it and clean it up. Those were things that prior to all of this craziness were just, like there was maybe a slot held for lunch, but I'll get it done whenever I want. And now it's like, nope, 11:30 to 1 is just blocked. Don't book meetings. I will decline them. I need to help with prep. I need to help with whatever is going on in the house at that point. And those were one things that also kind of changed in order to try to like create the mental sanity for, I really can't take that meeting at 11:30 to noon, because then I'm going to walk out into a hot mess in the kitchen kind of thing. So.
I gotta say, you all sound way more organized than we are with your schedules, and
I would say we sound more organized, but we're not.
Hey, it's all about what,
Yeah.
It's definitely not perfect. That's for sure. As
Yeah,
one of them bursts in here and loses their 15 minutes, right?
we tried setting a schedule, and we still sort of stick to it. I mean, we make sure that they have a certain amount of time dedicated to just physical activity, like riding bikes or walking, because it's good for us too, that like we just kind of build it all in together. I do struggle finding time for myself to work out, but I found that like I can just go and do sprints with the kids, and then or they can be playing while I'm doing a circuit workout out in our courtyard or something. But I definitely would say that syncing calendars with my husband has been hugely helpful, as well as just the grace aspect for all of us. I think especially with the kids, because like for instance, my almost 4-year-old, he has been getting pretty volatile lately. But then yesterday he just like during his breakdown, he just started talking about how much he missed school and his friends, and he misses his teacher. And it was just like, oh God. So it's like, he does these things where normally he probably would get like a timeout or something, but for this, it's like, you just can't get that mad at him. You have to understand that we're all struggling. I see a lot of these memes or like quotes and stuff online. Just people saying like, you know what, like if it's a battle between like sanity and getting education done, just choose the sanity part. Like, and so I think we're starting to kind of drift that way more. I mean, there's a lot of guilt going that way, because I do worry, like, are we going to make them way behind in school or whatever? But the reality is, I mean, it's a first grader and a preschooler. Like, I think they're going to be okay. It's probably
They're going to be perfectly okay. They're going to be perfectly okay.
Yeah. But I mean, there's still just that guilt. Like you want to do the best for them, but it's hard to figure out what that is right now. So my instinct is just to go with the grace and the empathy and that kind of part.
Yeah, I think everyone hit everything like right on the head. I mean, sounds like everyone struggles, just not even just within this. And we have here at GitLab, we have the in parenthood chat. seems all to be trending on the same wave. But just globally too, people worried, like Jen said, you know, is my child going to fall behind? I was actually having this conversation with my wife earlier. I have 4 younger siblings, and my youngest sister is 12. And, you know, my mom was doing the math of how many days of school she was actually missing. And it was like, it ended up being like 60 some days. And she had to take a breath and realize, hey, in 60 some days, she was going to watch like 4 movies for history, and like, you know, math is this section. She was like, look, it's not that big a deal. And it's funny that Jen said this, because my mom literally iterated the same thing with my little sister. She's choosing sanity right now. Like, and it's led to grace and empathy, realizing that, hey, the kids are also in this spot that's super strange. Whether they're in school or not, I think they're starting to sense that, hey, we're not going to the parks, we're not going to the coffee shops, we're not going to the restaurants, we're not going out on walks like in the neighborhood like as much as like we used to, or things of that nature, which kind of leads us in kind of a sharp turn into that positive realm of leading with empathy, grace, and kind of choosing sanity. Maybe really quickly to close it out, we can all kind of go around and just nail down like something positive we've taken from this. And I can kind of start with it. For me, it's been being remote and having my child at home with me has been amazing, because I've been able to have every single meal every single day in home with my child. And that's something coming from a single mother that I didn't get to have. And so it's been extremely important to me to sit down. We prep food, we do the thing, even if it's a mess and we're cooking like crazy or whatever, and we're in a rush, we still get to have food together. And that's been one big takeaway for me.
I'll say for me, I've been so amazed at how creative my kids are. So that's something I probably wouldn't have really noticed. Like, I mean, yeah, you get all the art stuff coming home from school, but to watch them just like freehand drawing and stuff, and or like the way that their minds work, I'm getting a much better look into that, and it's so fun. And finding other ways to learn that isn't necessarily like structured schoolwork has been awesome. It's been a great way to kind of learn who they are as people. Hi.
I was just telling my daughters this, that since they are home with me, I can give them a hug whenever I want. So instead of relying on pictures maybe sent home from teachers, if I'm lucky, I can step outside and just give them a quick hug, and that's really nice.
Yeah, I'd agree. Sharing the time and some of those littler moments together. You know, spring is starting to roll in here and we're getting nicer weather. It's nice to just go sit outside for 5-10 minutes together, where you just didn't get that kind of small bits together. So it's been good.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that everyone said, and just add that it's my girls miss their friends for sure, and they miss their teacher, and they love school and they love their teams, but they're having a lot of fun, and it's just great to see them just not have a rigorous schedule and just enjoy being at home, and just, you know, spend more time doing things that when we were so busy with everything that they weren't. So it's been really fun to watch them and enjoy being at home.
Awesome. It sounds like everyone, again, with the struggles we have, there are some great positive outcomes that are coming out of this and will continue to come out of this. I think as we start to lean more on, especially at GitLab, we have all these resources to lean on each other, reach out to each other, wins, stressors, how we're adapting, things like that. I think that globally as parents, and now having our children, our families at home, I think that something like this is really helpful. And again, this is a form of communication. I think that when it all comes down to it, communicating, whether it be via a hug or whether it be communicating your schedule, whatever it is, I think is the takeaway, and how we'll kind of get through this and learn a lot about not only ourselves, but our families and children as well. And I just want to thank everyone for their time today. And well, at GitLab, I'll see you on the next Zoom meeting or in the in-parenthood chat.
You guys are all doing a great job.
Everyone.
Thank you, Katie, for organizing this. It was fun.
Of course.
Nice to meet everyone. Bye.
All right, see ya.